A very, very good afternoon. Hi, everybody, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. Here we are back for a compassion check-in, and I have 6 sometimes regulars, sometimes part-time visitors, but mainly regulars here whenever they can, and they're always welcome. I've got Mia Morris. Do you want to wave in the top there? Let's say a quick hello, Mia.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
And Dr. Martin, if you want to say wave and say a quick hello.
Hello and good afternoon to all of you.
Absolutely.
Make your life count today.
Fantastic. And Danny, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, good afternoon.
Excellent. And we have Iris here. Iris, do you want to say a quick hi?
Hello.
And Kojo, good to see you. Kojo
Hello. Hello.
Excellent. Well, today's topic is life lessons. And I think this is about I've lost track, and we should give an honorary mention to Frank, who was here just before we started, but he's got to go into a business with a meeting, work meeting with important business. So he's not going to be with us today. But today's topic, life lessons, I had this thought when I thought that today might be the last compassion check-in. As it happens, this is probably going to be the last for a bit, and then we'll put them in periodically. But so that my original idea of this was really to talk about those lessons that maybe had emerged from these compassion check-ins, but actually, if I reflect beyond that, I'm going to invite us to think about life lessons far more broadly. Because one of the things that I often get people to do when I'm running workshops and talks, I'll often get them to reflect on their life and their learning. And people come up with all sorts of incredible wisdoms. And the funny thing for me is that only when we pause sometimes do we realize how much we know. The question is, do we apply that wisdom always? So I think I'm going to start off with a little bit of fun. As opposed to usually asking you all what you think, I'm going to send you all into some breakout rooms. I'm going to send you into breakout rooms, into 2 breakout rooms. In one of the rooms, there's going to be 3 of you, and 2 of them, there's going to be 2 of you. And I just wonder if you'll just very, very quickly share, what would you say is the greatest piece of advice that you were ever given? So the greatest piece of advice that you've ever been given. And you're only going to be in there for 3 minutes. So it's going to be 1 minute each person. So keep an eye on the time. So over to you, and you'll soon be going into your rooms. And welcome. That's if you want to coach. Click into your rooms. And welcome. And at that moment, a very warm welcome. Actually, you won't be able to hear me yet. A very, very warm welcome, Iris. Great to see you. Now, Iris, I tell you what, fun is just happening because I have just sent everybody into breakout rooms, and I'm about to send you into one. And today's topic is life lessons. Now, I know how wise you are, and you're full of life's wonderful wisdoms. So I thought that what I would do is I'm going to send you into a room with Dr. Martin and Danny, and everyone's just starting off with is sharing what's the greatest piece of advice that you've ever been given in your life. I'm going to send you in there right now so that you can join them, and I'll see you soon. Right, so I'm going to type to the groups what's been their greatest piece of advice in life. Okay. So today's topic, life lessons. And I wonder, whilst I am just about to send a message to our groups, what about you? What's been your greatest life lessons? How many have there been? And what's been the greatest teacher? Have you learned them by yourself? Have they come from friends, through work? Have they come from experiences? Have they come through good times, through challenges? It would be really interesting to know. For me, it's been a little bit of a blend of a number of things. I think there's been some life lessons that have come through from life events and through things that haven't chimed with me. One of the ones that I'll just share with you is that one of the earliest ones I can remember was when I was age, I think 15, and I was at school. And I was in an economics class. My two economics teachers used to write blackboards full of notes, and one of them in particular. And we just write all this stuff down. And I realized, I was looking at my book, I realized I had all this stuff in my book that I just didn't understand. And I vowed then never to write down anything that I didn't understand. And that's a vow that I've kept to this day. And it really, really did serve me. So it was a really, really useful life lesson that in that moment of, well, hang on a minute, why am I here? It became something really, really valuable. So yeah, I'm gonna bring everybody back in a minute and let's see what they've learned. And so for you, I want to ask you that same question. What about you? You know, what was the earliest life lesson that you can recall? It would be really interesting maybe to kind of chart all of those main lessons. So we've got in one room, we've got Iris, we've got Kojo, and we've got Mia. And in the other room, we have Iris, and we've got Dr. Martin, and we have got Danny. So it'll be really interesting hearing what they've all got to say, what their life lessons have been. They're all coming back. Yeah, this is such an interesting one. And as I was saying right at the beginning, I think that very often, you know, for me, life is full of lessons. Oh, people are clicking back already. Aha! I see the power team are back already. Iris and Mia are already back. Aha, everyone else is just on their way back, can be back in 39 seconds. Were you both in the same room? Oh yeah, you were. You're in the same power team. Yeah, gonna get you to, I'll get you to unmute in a minute, and Mia maybe to kick us off. And the others will be back very, very, very shortly. I was just sharing with the audience whilst you were all in rooms, the very earliest piece of advice I remember. In fact, it was a piece of advice to myself. In fact, the others can be back in 8 seconds, so I'll wait until they get back and then I'll just share it. And then I'm gonna be keen to hear what you've all got to say. Okay, everybody is back. Welcome, 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 welcome back. Welcome back, folks. And Kojo's not back, but hopefully we'll be able to, oh, here he is, here's everyone back. Welcome, welcome, welcome back, folks. I'm gonna turn to Mia first, but just before you do, I was just sharing with the audience, whilst you were in your rooms, the earliest memory I can, not the earliest memory I can remember, but one of the earliest pieces of kind of advice that I remember I was sat in an economics class, I was age 15, and my economics teachers used to write blackboards full of notes. I don't know if you had teachers like this, you know, where they just dictate stuff to you. It's not really a great way of learning. And this piece of advice was myself to myself. I was sat there and I had all these notes in my book and I realized that I didn't understand the stuff that I was writing down. And I vowed then I would never, ever again write down anything that I didn't understand. And it's a vow I've kept to this day. So that piece of advice was from myself to myself, that realization, that life lesson to myself. What's the point of me sitting here in a class, writing down things that I have no understanding? Mia, you were in with Kojo and Iris. And Mia, because you were the first one back, I wondered, do you want to share is there anything you can openly share with us that came through in your group?
Well, with my life lesson, I've got two of them. One of them is from my auntie, who you do know, which is to say, when times get tough, you learn to lie low. When everyone is fighting and arguing amongst themselves, you just find a way of removing yourself and lying low.
It's a really good life lesson, and particularly I think it's one of the ones that lots of kids will really identify with, because when you're very young, often you really learn that lesson, isn't it? You realize, actually, is there a value in me adding to this noise? Or is it best that just let these people sort it out? Actually, it reminds me of like when I was a kid, my brothers often used to fight, so I used to just leave them to it. My two older brothers used to. Anything that you wanted to share? Iris K, you were in the same group. Anything you wanted to share? Oh, you're just on mute.
Yeah, I just shared that for me, one of the biggest lessons was in difficult situations, not to jump to conclusions, judgments and decisions, but that actually having the peace and the courage to just collect facts in a neutral way. And when you have to make the decision, you automatically know what to do, and that often can bring a completely different outcome than what you initially would think is the right answer, what you should do.
I absolutely love that. You said don't jump to conclusions, decisions, and what was the third? Judgments and decisions. So wise. Isn't that just so wise, that lifelong learning? And can I just ask, when did you realize that? Because that's a real good lesson that many people never learn. When did you, what can you remember, can you recall?
Yeah, it was actually in my early to mid-20s. I read a book written by Dale Carnegie at the time. Can't remember the book title. And, you know, I had to apply that when I started to live in England and I was married. And I was considering to get divorced or not, and didn't quite know, should I go back to Germany or what to do? And I then had the opportunity to go to South Africa and have a completely life-changing experience. And it was just, you know, when the door opened, you just know. So
did that, the two, so it sounds like the two things combined, that reading and that learning, and then that life then seemed to open, but because you said don't jump to conclusions, judgments, and decisions. And if you can sit with that, then and collect the facts, then you can make the best decision over time, and it becomes open to you. It sounds as though then that's what happened for you. Is that fair to say? Yeah,
and I think it is actually just about sharpening your awareness in a non-judgmental way, right, to actually see what's around you.
Wonderful.
And right now I'm actually on a similar journey where I decided to take time out before I decide what exactly I'm going to do. And by just sitting back and being quiet, I start to learn things that really surprise me, but that only comes in the quiet and silence of life and listening.
It's a lovely link between what you were saying and what Mia was sharing, that thing, lying low, being still, being quiet, pausing. Very, very powerful. The last person in that group was Kojo. Kojo, welcome back to Compassion Check-In. Good to see you here, sir. Radio man, can you tell us, what did you share with the group? What piece of advice did you share?
I remember I was 15. I was 15 years old when I went to visit my grandfather.
Oh, it's a bit noisy. It's a bit noisy, Kojo, but we're there with you.
Nah. It's not, I'm not going to let the noise hijack this.
It might be the reception, so we'll let you get inside, and then the reception might mean we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm good now. Can you hear me now, right?
Yeah, but I'm wondering if it might be the connection of your headphones. Would you be able to hear us without headphones? It might be the headphones connection that's breaking up. Would you be able to hear? Oh, we can't. Oh, say it now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, slightly better, but go for it.
I remember I was 15. Can you hear right? Am I coming through?
Ooh, you are, but you're coming through as though you're on Citizens Band Radio.
Go with somebody. I'll connect my computer.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to come back to you. Because I know it's going to be wise. We're going to let you reconnect. Let's go to the second room. It was Danny, Dr. Martin, and Iris. Iris, welcome back. So I'm going to turn to you first. Welcome back to Compassion Check-In. Do you want to kick us off? If you want to unmute.
Unmute, Iris.
I'm glad to be back. I'm sorry that I arrived late, and actually I just disturbed Dr. Martin and Danny's flow, you know. But it's typical of me to do that sort of thing. Sorry about that. You know, I arrived, but always late. I actually planned to be here, but then the client was on, and then I was late. So I don't think I should be first, Rasheed. Actually, I think
Dr. Martin, you're next in my picture. So, Dr. Martin, do you want to share with us, what did you share?
I shared the fact that in 2009, I reached a sort of health crisis of being very stressed, having all of my teaching responsibilities, everything that I was doing in my work was really piling and weighing down on me, and it had an adverse effect on my body. And I had to go and see someone, and in the process of therapy for you know, just getting all of the weight off of me. He said, considering everything you've told me about the way in which your day flows, from a 2-hour journey into work all the way through to what you're doing until the 2-3 o'clock in the morning in terms of work, you are doing far too much, whereby you've put a lot of pressure on yourself, and you have all of this stress, and you have a great deal of tension. And from everything that you've told me, this is my advice to you. And I sat and I waited, and I thought, yes, oh my God, the light is coming. What is it? And he said to me, based on everything you've told me, I would say you don't have to react to everything.
Mm.
You don't have to respond to everything.
Mm.
All the demands of work that requires a response from you, that requires a reaction from you, the demands when you're not working, everything that just made me have to think and do and think and do and just, keep responding and reacting and I would say overreacting as well, had placed a great deal of pressure on my mind and body. And it was too much. It was absolutely too much. And when I took his advice, I began the journey to bringing myself towards happiness. And that's a journey that I've been on, and it's made me such a better person, better at listening, better at taking advice, better at reading people, better at understanding through empathy, and not allowing sympathy to actually derail me. When one is very sympathetic to every single problem, it very often means that you're not being very helpful. In order to help someone, you've got to have problem solves. And if all you're doing is sympathizing with them, you are not necessarily providing solutions for them. So empathy is a vitally important element of helping people to overcome what they're dealing with. And I understood the meaning of trying to help them, but being sympathetic and sort of taking on their energy and their burden and everything else along with my own was too much.
Really, really powerful. So there's a number of lessons there, isn't it? That brought through from that kind of health kind of crisis, not powerful words of the doctor, which meant that you then looked at, every aspect, every aspect of life. And I love the bit that you ended, not only the pressure that you're putting on yourself, but that thing about when sometimes we're wanting to help others, but in what way is it that are we actually helping? Are we just colluding? Are we just in there? Or are we actually helping them move forward? Danny, what did you share with the group?
I wanted to just note, actually, I like the thread of everything. I kind of agree with it all and have that same idea, I guess. And what I've noticed with my own profound time of this particular thing that helped me mostly was in the times that I guess, as most of you are sharing, that they're quite sad or upsetting or quite hard times. And that was the definite thread with myself, that was through hard times I wanted to challenge myself and find out what things are all about and why I'm feeling like this all the time. And I guess it was as simple as being aware of myself in the equation is perhaps the one thing. Rash definitely shared a lot of that with me, and that's helped me tremendously get a greater understanding, and just noticing myself with what Iris K was saying there as well, like and noticing all, being quiet enough to notice myself as well, being quiet enough to notice other people and be quiet enough. It all kind of relates back, and not to react with what Dr. Martin said, that comes from a stillness and a quietness and again, looking at yourself to look, not react. And so that was for me the most profound. And like, just being still, I totally get all of that as well. But yeah, just looking at myself is definitely the best thing that's helped me, or best way has helped me in life so far. There's actually, can I share a lyric with you?
Yeah, sure, please.
I know it's only because it came to my head when we're talking about all of this, and it was here the other day. I just got it up here, and it is it's just, this is from really big favorite band of mine. And his lyrics go, take a look around, find a way in the silence, lie supine away with your back to the ground, dis and reconnect to the resonance now. You were never an island. And I guess,
let's credit the songwriter as artists ourselves. Let's give it.
Yeah, of course. It's from a band called Tool, which for years a lot of my friends were listening to, and I could never pick it up. And the writer is Maynard Keenan. He's the singer. But yeah, over the last probably 5-6 years, I've become really familiar with his stuff and have really appreciated it. There's a lot of nice lessons within his music.
Well, I was liking all the things you're saying, and I love that thing about, you know, lots of those lessons of just looking at oneself, listening to oneself, because so often in life that when we get caught up in lots of stuff, everything is blaming everybody else, and that time to self-reflect, and therefore the life lessons that can come from that self-awareness, self-reflection. Kojo, welcome back, and welcome, Robin. Good to see you. Kojo, over to you. You were sharing, and then we'll turn to Iris and Robin in terms of what were you sharing with the group in terms of your first or main life lesson, or the greatest piece of advice you were given?
I was 15 when I had gone to visit my grandfather, and we're talking, and he was asking me about work, school and everything to do with my classes and how I was faring at school and everything. And he realized that I was talking about other people, because he was asking me a question as to how I was faring at school, my subjects and everything. But my grandfather noticed that I was talking about other boys whose fathers came in with big Mercedes Benz and who were wearing certain trainers and who were living in big places and all the rest of it. And he said, I'm asking you, how are you faring at school? And, you know, I couldn't get it. And I was just talking about other people. Yeah, I'm fine, but these people are that, these people are that. And my grandfather said this to me. I was 15, he said to me, remember this, you are enough. You are enough. Everybody can have theirs, but you are enough. So now tell me, how are you in school? And I said, well, I'm struggling with maths. I'm struggling with this, and I don't really like this thing that much. And he said, okay, so you didn't want to tell me that you were struggling with maths, and you found a way to tell me about other people, didn't you? I said, yes. He said, you are still enough in your weaknesses. And what I learned quickly at 15 was, it's okay to be weak. It's okay to not know and not try, not know, and be okay to say, look, I don't know it, and come clean. And even in your weakness, you are still enough. Have the confidence to say, listen, I don't know, I am prepared to work on myself, but not negating or switching the attention to something else because I don't want to focus on me. So that's what I learned at 15, very, very early in life.
What wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Iris, can we turn to you? And then I'm going to turn to Robin, who's also joined us. So yeah, what did you share with the group? And I know you only had a little bit of time when you arrived.
Oh, well, I actually shared, it's not very different now that I'm hearing the others here. I was about maybe 19, and I had this super nice job, and I was doing 2 universities, and my father was always trying to curb my enthusiasm for everything. And so in this job, they said, oh, it was like the first elections in democratic elections in Angola. And my company got the contract to do the political research there. And then they said, oh, are you interested in going? At 19, I really thought that I had a chance of going. So I rang my father and say, well, you know, I want to go to Angola. Is it okay if I stop the university? And then he just told me, well, you know, you have to remember that stones that roll too much will never create moss. And this is like something that we say in Brazil to say, if you're moving around too much, you're never going to finish anything. You're never going to do your full potential. So of course, I was quite angry with him because even though I was over 18, I wouldn't be brave enough to leave the country without my father saying that I could, or without my family blessing me to do that. And I just answered him back, well, but it's like taxi. If I am always in the rank, in the taxi rank, I'm never gonna get a passenger. And then, this was our fight until he died about 2 years later. It took me many years to understand what he was trying to tell me, because he knew my personality. I had, at 17, I had tried to go into a Carmelita's nun thing, because I believed that it was amazing just to be contemplating God in silence. You can see how much I talk. And my father said, I'm not going to let you commit this sin against God. And it was always like that. So it took me about 10 years to understand that, because of my personality of just being enthusiastic about everything, I do have this idea that I can do everything. And sometimes I forget that actually I just have to stop to be able to finish.
This is so wonderful, Iris, because it's women like you that remind me why women are beautiful. There are people who, they will give you their professionalism, and I'm being really professional here. And oh, I want to make sure that you understand and I'm being politically correct. And I just think, oh, move, just go. There's not an ounce of truth in what you're presenting to me, girlfriend. And then there's a woman like you whose truth is a part of your every being. And when you find that, that's what's powerful. It's magical, it's beautiful, it's intellectually engaging, it's stimulating, and you think, I like her. She's my friend, she's my friend, or I want her to be my friend. You want to bring women like you into your life rather than someone who's masquerading as a professional and who is just awful.
It's interesting as you speak, and I was just reflecting on the life lessons you've said, and I'm going to bring in Robin in here in just a second. One of the things that just jumps out to me is that sometimes life lessons aren't always easy, or they're not necessarily said in a warm way. They may not seem at that time compassionate. It might seem like a hard lesson to learn, isn't it? They're often not necessarily easy. I remember one of the things that, I don't know if this was a life lesson, but it was a life learning, if you sort of mean it was a life learning. I remember I wanted to be, the very first thing I wanted to be was an author when I was a kid. And when I went to secondary school, my second English teacher was an author, and he had written a best-selling book. And so for me, this was huge that my English teacher was a best-selling author and so on. And I never forget that I used to write poetry, and I used to write little novel things when I was a kid. And I remember in an English lesson, and I always used to think I was very, very smart and all this stuff. Yeah. And he said to me at one point, in the class, I can't remember what I'd been saying. He said, look, if you want to be an author, then you need to at least sort your grammar out, because I would often not pay attention to the small details. And at the time I hated him saying this, but what was beautiful about that, I suddenly realized, and I can't remember when the realization hit me, the magical lesson of this for me was that the acknowledgement. Here's somebody who acknowledged what I wanted to do. And so for me, there was something very, very, very profound in that. So it's interesting, isn't it, how different life lessons, some of them are easy to learn, some of them are tough to learn. Robin, I'm going to invite you to welcome Robin. We can see the name Robin, and hopefully you can hear us. I'm going to invite you to unmute. Anything you wanted to share with us, Robin? I don't know if you've got your camera there, or it might be that you're on the move. Anything you want to share with us? Today's topic is life lessons. So, and I just sent everyone into rooms before where they'd shared the greatest piece of wisdom they'd been received. Or what would you say is the main life lesson that you've received, or that's struck you at any time in life?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So my camera is a bit messed up because I tried to fix my phone myself and I ended up mixing up the components. Long story short, the camera's broken and the audio doesn't work.
Oh, we can hear you nice and crisply.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would say, I'd say the same as you. It was a life learning. I kind of realized the importance of how powerful the mind can be. And it was unfortunate, a series of an event. It was, to put it into layman's terms, there was this guy when I was younger. I was about 12 or 13, or yeah, 12, 13, 14. And he just, every time I went out, he was there, and there was something about him. I was in I don't know what kind of state I was in at the time. I think it was a jealousy thing, but anyway, I'll be honest, I had kind of hatred toward him, because he'd always stick fights with everybody. He'd always just kind of think he's above everyone. I know it's probably like a bad mindset to be in at the time, but there was something in me that didn't like him, because he had all this, this anger and like all the time. And it wasn't until one day that somehow I got into a fight with him. And it ended up with me being like not able to move for the summer, which was 3 months. Which it's kind of I wasn't, sorry, I don't know how to put this in words. I wasn't mad at the fact that I was in a fight. I was mad, and I kind of realized, okay, as I was learning through life, how when you think about things, they come to you, and they, like, you get attracted to them. So I was like kind of realizing in my mind that I was thinking of hatred toward him so much that I actually had a conflict with him. And I realized, okay, well, if I keep thinking of these kind of negative things, that maybe they will happen all the time. So that's, I kind of realized the importance of the mind. And that's what kind of put me on a journey to, being more in touch with myself. And that's eventually how I kind of came across your quote, Rasheed. So, and another life lesson was, not being afraid to able to be like networking. And that's where I met you. And I think that was the biggest step for me, to meet someone of great wisdom and be in a room full of wiser people as well. So
really powerful. Thank you so much for what you're saying there, Robin. I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because there's so many things that jump out to me, and many people have been sharing stories that related to learnings when they were much younger, as Kojo did, and as you were sharing, Iris G. It's just, what jumps out to me is that life, especially when we're younger, but not just when we're younger, it can be so complex, so difficult, isn't it? Knowing which way to turn, what to do, knowing how to feel about ourselves and about the world. And there's all of these, but yet there's so many opportunities to learn lessons, isn't it? There's so many, I have the saying that almost, like, life is constantly teaching us lessons. The question is, are we showing up? Are we learning? I feel that we're always learning. One of the things that's come to me in recent terms is a saying that where there's hurting, what's the learning? Where there's hurting, what is the learning? So it could be that, that I love, for example, how honest that everybody was, like what Robin shared, isn't it? It's possible we notice somebody and they seem to have a lot of anger, and then we notice that there's an anger in us, and then we get involved and this and that. And often lots of stuff emerges because we feel as though we're right, or as we feel as though we've been wronged. And so much of this, the learning is temperance. It's Mia kicked it off with that lying low, or the self-reflection stuff, or with Dr. Martin, what you were sharing there about the importance of actually taking care of oneself, and so on. Are there any lessons that you wished you had learned earlier? Anyone want to? The hands are all up. I think, Dr. Martin, you had your hand up first, and then Iris K, so we'll come to you in that order.
I think, but it's very difficult when you're a teenager and then moving towards your early 20s to actually learn patience. Because as a teenager, very definitely, and as a man in my early 20s, impulsive, impetuous, impatient, rash, impulsive, these were distinctive characteristics, which meant I'll only listen to you if you're saying things that I want to hear. And I'm only going to agree with what you say if it fits into my frame of consciousness. If you want to say the things that people I don't like have to say, move, go away. And that impatience, as well as intolerance, but when you're 19, impatience, intolerance, a sense of self-reflexivity is not a part of your vocabulary, never mind your consciousness. And when, for example, as a teenager, you then find the love of your life, and that's going to stay with you for the next 20 years, as it did with me. It was sort of like, you know, it was so unbelievably wonderful. So let's get this. You've got all these A-levels, you've gone to college, you're in love and you are loved very deeply, and you're doing a job that you also really enjoy. So, you know, life is pretty good. You know, it's just like, you know, come on, sunshine, shine on me. And you just feel invincible. But what happens in this stage is very often a complete unawareness of other people's experience that can give you the kinds of life lessons that you're going to need when you tip out of your 20s and move into your 30s and then beyond.
Can I ask really briefly, just because what you're saying is powerful, and it so resonates with me. When was that lesson learned? Because so when was that lesson learned? Because it would be really interesting. When was that lesson learned? Because sometimes we've got this feeling, don't we? Something needs to change or whatever, but we're kind of resisting it, or we're denying it, or we're just blind, or whatever. When was that lesson learned, or how long was it being resisted for?
I would say the lesson was learned when I began writing professionally, because I was doing other things, you know. I went to school, and when I finished university, I was told, you do, of course, realize that no one is going to employ you as a writer for the theatre. You know, no one's going to employ, you are aware that, you know, Black people don't work in the theatre and no one hires them to write. And this lecturer was able to tell me that with a very straight face. And I realized that, you know, what you called advice is what I call an obstruction. And I said to myself, you are not talking and thinking beyond your own perception of life. And I absolutely knew there was more to what she was saying to me, and there was more than I knew. And I thought, if she's telling me, I've just finished university and I'm being told I have no career, and that's so strange. So it was thinking about, how do I make my way in the world, undertaking the profession that I wanted, and becoming successful, and who do I meet in the world that's going to give me an insight as to, can I make these dreams come true? And that's when I started listening to other voices, not just feeding off of my own sense of accomplishment or ambition, but listening to other people. And that was a very big life turning point.
Really interesting. This is really interesting. I'm going to bring in Iris K there, because what's jumping out to me, and then I'll bring in Danny, because this is fascinating about, when do we learn the lessons? Do we keep needing to make the mistakes or falling down? When is that we learn lessons? So Iris, you'd raise your hand also at this thing with the lessons that you wish you had learned earlier. Over to you, and then over to Danny.
Yeah, just as some people were talking about irritating people and what that teaches us and how to respond. It was about 8-10 years ago. I went to a seminar, was a whole weekend, and there was a lot to learn about humanity and how we're all connected, etc. And it was a number of experiential learning exercises to do, you know, where you actually go through an exercise and you actually don't know what the purpose is. And at the end, you look back and reflect, and then you realize what you've learned. And there was one exercise about other people that we find irritating, and what the traits are and what they're doing. And after that, it kind of flipped itself on its back to look at actually that a lot of these things are your own dark sides. And that really made me stop in my track. So now, when I find that I'm getting annoyed or irritated about other people, that I actually step back and think, how does it look inside you actually? Never mind them. But if that's something you dislike, where is that in you potentially?
It's such a beautiful lesson. It's so often the case, isn't it? Isn't it? There is such a lot in that, isn't it? There is that thing about, hang on, what's that saying about you? And it was interesting because Robin touched on that before, isn't it? It tied in with Robin's point, isn't it? You know, he was this character, seeing them out and about all the time, didn't like them because of the anger. And it was really extraordinary that something then created that anger and then an actual conflict. And then, but a powerful lesson, and I guess a good lesson to learn very early on, and then to so early learn that lesson and moving forward. Danny, over to you, and then Kojo.
Just wanted to jump in actually with Dr. Martin and what he was saying, because that was really quite special. And I think if any of what Dr. Martin said could reach some people right now, that's happening in this moment right now in the arts sector, I think that would be quite profound, that little segment on its own, because right now in the arts, with COVID and with everything going on, especially in the UK, there isn't anybody who is in the government championing for keeping the arts thriving and alive. And so you've got first years going into 3-year courses where they have no outcome at the end, or no potential outcome at the end right now, that they're going into and spending a lot of money on. And quite on the other side, you've got third years going out of university where they have no, you know, it's different for Dr. Martin and what, you know, he had been told from him, but now there's a whole group of everybody coming out of the arts with no job, no career, no prospects. And I think, I don't know if this is I'm not going to quote this very well, but I think there was something from the government that suggested you have to just go and find another job. It's as though like there's no care or thought for the arts in its sector and what it actually represents in connecting people, being alive with our own energy in song, dance, theatre, acting, however it might be that whatever you're studying. It's such a rich part of community and focus on bringing everybody together. And it's what right now that doesn't seem to be a lot of. And so if, you know, Dr. Martin's so right in just, you know, finding those people that can champion you into finding a way back in the arts, because it will come back. I'm sure it will come back, but right now it feels like it's not going to come back. And I think the university students could really do with that wise words from Dr. Martin.
Thanks so much for that. And Coach, I'm going to bring you in. And one of the things that just jumps out at me is that just whilst you were speaking there, Danny, I think that so many of life lessons aren't learned in formal, obvious settings. I mean, it's quite interesting actually, because actually when Iris Kay was speaking, that's a powerful example where it was at a course, at a workshop, seminar, what have you. But very often these life lessons can be, they're learned at the street, they're learned in an aside with somebody, they're learned in all sorts of places. And I think the thing is that, again, I repeat that thing that, you know, the funny thing about life is that it's constantly teaching us lessons. And the thing is, usually we're just not listening. We're not open every day. Usually everything that irritates you is full of lessons, but we're just not listening. So I'm so often, Coach, over to you, my friend.
It was when Dr. Martin was speaking, I laughed and I was brimming with excitement, and I just could not wait to chip in. I had a similar experience because I wanted to go into advertising at the time. No, I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do. And because I had so many things coming to, my father had his own business. I didn't want to work with my father. I wanted to do something different. And I was hearing so many things, seeing so many things. And I remember there was a gentleman who used to work with my father. And he was very, very below the belt, as in he wasn't as part of the directors. He was sort of a mechanic, and he was very diligent with what he was doing. I was very young, and he would come to work and they would send him around and he would do all sorts and everything. And I realized that this gentleman had this consistency with what he was doing, even though he wasn't part of the bigger boys or the bigger girls doing all the big deals and everything. He was very consistent. And one day I'd gone to see my father and I saw him, and he was telling me, so what do you want to do? And I said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And he said, oh, if you work with your father, you will one day take over from your father. And I didn't want to do it. It wasn't a thing. I wasn't big on what my father was doing. I rather preferred what somebody else, my father's competitor, was doing. This gentleman said to me, you can't do it. He said, you can't do it. And for years, I went around believing that I couldn't. Even though I was very much in the opportunity, I just knew I couldn't. I believed it until one day. A very good friend of my father had come in and we were talking, and he was asking me what I wanted to do. And I told him what I wanted to do. And he said to me, if only you are going to believe in yourself and just pursue what you want to do, everything is possible.
Very nice.
Rush, it was like this man had given me a box of gold. He said, all you need to do is to focus, just focus. And he said, put on the blinkers on like a horse rider and just go for it. And till today, I use those words. I don't move an inch. You don't move me off my center. If I decide to do it, I put the blinkers on and I don't look at anything. And it was something I wish I learned so quick in life. And that's my lesson. But when Dr. Martin was speaking, it was how people can say something to you. And as young as I was, I didn't have the skills and the knowledge and the lexicon and the narrative to really understand what was going on. But when the other guy said it, and Rush, as you said, I listened. You know, it's one thing being spoken to, and it's another thing you also listening. When the other man spoke, I listened. Or I would say, when the first person spoke, I heard. But when the second person spoke, I listened. And I heard it and I felt I would run with this, and it changed my life. So it's about the hearing and the listening. And it gave me that balance. Thank you, Rash.
Yeah, it's fascinating this. I want to ask you all, I'm going to turn to Mia first, but it would be interesting to ask you all the piece of advice that, it sounds cliche, but I think it's really important, the piece of advice you would give to your younger self. You know, because I think this piece of advice is really profound because it was still useful for us now. The irony about this piece of advice that we'd give to our younger self will probably help us now. Mia, first of all, if there's anything else you're wanting to reflect on, because I love the way that you listen so richly and diligently, anything you're wanting to share about life lessons generally before I'm going to ask you to kick us off with this piece of advice that you might give to a younger self?
Everything will be all right. At the end of the day, when you work it all through, and you go through all the storm and all the rest of it, isn't there a quote by Maya Angelou that want to be the rainbow in your cloud or something like that? Once there's the clouds, there will always be a rainbow. Yeah, no, really, really powerful. Iris G, well, can you kick us off here with the advice that you'd give to your younger self? And it's interesting that stuff because you kicked us off with the 19-year-old self. It will be interesting. What would you say to your younger self? But I guess we need to be mindful of, again, as you'd said, you're reflecting back on what your father said to you, mindful of your personality. What advice would you give to your younger self?
You are very annoying. That's what I would say. I was an annoying person. Nowadays, sometimes I can shut up. But most of the time, I still carry the same personality. It took me years to learn what my father was trying to tell me, that actually, you know, I really believed that I could do things, and I did a lot of things that most people say, you cannot do it. I'll do it just to prove them wrong. But at a very high personal cost.
Right. So how would you word that then, Iris? How would you word that piece of advice in a way that that 19-year-old self, or somebody who's watching this or listening to this back can grasp? How would you word it for anybody who's perhaps, you know, at that stage in life? How would you word it as a piece of advice to them?
I think that when we are young, we really have this belief that we can fix a lot of wrongs in the world because we have youth on our side and everything on our side. I think that the advice that really I tell them, yes, it's okay to be enthusiastic and it's okay to know that you can do it. But sometimes you should just stand back and let others do it. Might not be what you want, but you don't have to fix everything. And, you know, this is I just, if I can see that in some members of my family, and I try to talk to my niece about that. Yes, you may be able to do everything, but why should you do it? You know, if you do it, you're taking the opportunity for someone else, taking the opportunity of someone else doing something. You know, it's just like, and I was, well, I am still very annoying sometimes. I think that when we are young, we just forget that sometimes you can come across very annoying to other people because we believe in what we do. And actually, because we are young, we can do most of the things that we believe. But sometimes, you know, in the long term, perhaps it's not even the best option. Like going to Angola at 19 and leaving university. Definitely, it wasn't the best option.
Okay, thanks for that. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because as I reflect on that, I think it's such a tricky one, isn't it? Because one of the things that jumps out to me is that there are some qualities that I had when I was younger that whilst I'm glad that I learned the lessons, there are some things that I did that I'm not sure I would have had I don't know if the word is courage, the drive or the naiveness to go after. So I think that some of the things that we try and achieve, particularly when we're younger, or in my case when I was younger, that I'm glad in a way in my ignorance or my ego that I went after. I'm also glad that they didn't necessarily happen for me. So it's an extraordinary one, how life often will be the teacher. You know, so I'm saying again, we don't teach you that you'll either learn it or life will teach us. You know, life will teach us. Can you name somebody else who will go next? Lessons to their younger self, or it could even be advice to yourself now. Who would you like to name?
I'd like to hear Danny.
Danny, your advice to your younger self, or if you want to yourself now. But I like the younger self.
Thank you, Iris. Thank you, Iris. Actually, yeah, the advice I'd give to my younger self would actually be to embrace all aspects of life. But I know my younger self probably wouldn't have heard that very clearly. So I would have probably gone on and over-explained it in a way that's about, just because that's how he'd need to listen. And about what I mean by embracing all aspects of life, I suppose, is the ups and the downs. I never embraced a lot of the downside of my life. And I kind of came at it from just the hearing, as Bonte puts it, not the listening. So if I could just listen to those moments that are really tough and really hard, as opposed to just hearing it and acting with emotion, but acting with just the true centered self, it would make it such a more enjoyable experience. But I wouldn't also change everything that's happened in my past, because I wouldn't be here now, and I wouldn't be here with everybody here. I wouldn't have this awareness of life that I feel I have now if it wasn't for everything that's gone on in my past. So for all of those bad things that have happened, and we each, I'm sure, have stories and can share as many as, as high as the sky, they would not, I think before I would have wanted to never had them. Now I embrace the fact that they were in my life, because they've made me who I am at this moment as well.
Love that, love that. Who are you going to pass the baton to, the advice to the younger self?
I'm going to go for Robin.
Robin, over to you, who I think the youngest person on the call. So you can, I wonder if you can give advice to yourself at 12.
Oh my God.
Are you going to give advice to that 12-year-old just before you got into the fight?
Thank you, Danny. I would say after the fight, I would say, truth be told, I would say, if you're thinking about something, I'd say act on it. And I would say, if you're after results that you're looking for, sometimes they may not take the necessary time, like they might not happen overnight. And I would say enjoy the process, because it's a wonderful process.
Well, very wise words, my friend. Very, very wise. Very, very wise. Who would you like to pass the baton to next?
I would like to pass it to, who have we not heard from?
We haven't heard from Mia, Dr. Martin, Iris K, and Bonte.
Oh, so I'd like to pass it to Bonte, please.
Okay, Bonte.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Robin. My advice to my younger self: you are enough. Very enough.
Yeah.
You are very, very, very enough. With your mistakes, with your successes, with what you think you don't know, you are enough. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to learn in the process. It's okay to doubt yourself sometimes. It's okay to be confident. It's okay to say, I'm sorry. And it's okay to say, I don't know.
So I love that. I love that. I love that. And you've got to come back on here when the radio show is starting.
Certainly.
You've got to
I
come
will
back.
do that, Rash.
Who are you going to pass the baton to?
I'll pass it on to Dr. Martin.
Dr. Martin, advice to younger self.
In a way, it falls into two areas. One would be believe in yourself, because my belief in myself has made me the man that I am today. In the United Kingdom, there has been no Brit that has told me you have phenomenal potential that can be professionally honed so that you can become the person that you are. People in Germany, I've worked at the University of Frankfurt, people in Germany, in Italy, in different parts of Holland, many Europeans have told me about what they see as my skill and talent, but Brits, no, never. So being able to recognize that what filled me up as a child, as a teenager, to become what I have become, keep believing in yourself.
And the second half, and the second piece of advice to yourself.
Keep dreaming. My dreams have always kept the light in my spirit. I have never suffered from depression in the face of everything that I've dealt with. I have never stopped believing in myself, and I have never thought that life is not worth living. I believe in God Almighty, and that keeps me going every single day as I deal with the day, you know, as I face my challenges. And my belief in God Almighty and my belief in myself gives me the light and energy, truly, I'm not joking, to make friends and befriend people and to be open to the world and understand that life always changes. Those questions that they ask you in an interview, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? That is a redundant question. If you ask somebody in 2015, where do they see themselves in 5 years' time, do you think they would imagine COVID-19? No one could possibly imagine where we are today. But perhaps what you can imagine is what you want to become. And this is where the perfunctory job response, you know, in terms of, oh, I want to be in your position, I want your job. This is banal as well as BS. What you have to say is what you believe, what your dreams are. Your dreams are everything that keeps your spirit alive, and it also brings people to you. So keep believing and keep dreaming is what I would tell my younger self, because it will come true.
Yes.
Wonderful. And who would you like to pass the baton to, Mia or Iris? I think that will be everyone, right?
I think it is everyone. Mia, I think Mia spoke.
I spoke, yeah.
Yes.
Iris K.
Hasn't everyone gone around?
No, Iris K. We haven't heard from Iris K.
Oh, we have not. Well, in that case, let us hear from Iris without Henry.
Well, I have Jordan here. So I'm balancing around the greyhound. Yeah, I think one of the big things that I learned in the seminar that I mentioned earlier on was a good point, that there are only two things, love and fear. Whatever happens has a root in either love and fear. And I think in my family was quite a fear-driven family. And so what I would love to say to my younger self is, number one, life loves you. So trust that, you know, life will always want to bless you, or God will always want to bless you. And similarly, it's a quote from Marianne Williamson from her book, Return to Love, which says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that most frightens us.
Ding.
Very powerful. I think the thing that I would say to my younger self, it just came into my mind, I'd just say one word, which would be shine, would be my advice to my younger self. But I think the other piece of advice that I would say generally now is one of my quotes, which is, the magic of life happens when you stop expecting life to present you with opportunities and you start presenting opportunities to life. When you stop expecting life to present you with opportunities, but you show up, and you show up with that sense of possibility, magic, and so on, the whole game changes. You know, I'd also say, you know, just embrace it. There's only two choices in life: to fight it or embrace it. If you fight it, ultimately you'll lose because you are of it and it is of you. But if you embrace it, then you become one with it and you become lived. So for me, I would say that ultimately the big piece of life is really embrace it with all its ups and downs, embrace it with all of its seasons. Learn from all the seasons. I think a couple of it learned about it, and know you're going to learn far more from the races that you lose. And don't be afraid of that, you know. And I think that also, you know, again, just I want to wrap up with that thing about what strikes me in my psyche now is that life is full of lessons all the time, all those minor irritations, the person who annoys you, the scenario that's tricky, you know, these are rich with learning and lessons. So I just want to thank you all for being here and for sharing your wonderful life lessons and learnings and stories here this time. I want to, just for the sake of this, just in case we're live on air, I just want to tell you the date of the next compassion check-in, if I know it, and just in case there's any last pieces of wise words that anyone's wanting to share, just whilst I'm looking here. It might.
I will say this, Rash. I will say to, I think, every black man in Britain that has so many problems that they're trying to cope with, and to all of us here, because I respect the people that I'm looking at, and that is, in between fitting in and standing out, I think we need to stand out, not fit in.
I hear you. Next, it might well be next Wednesday, the 14th of October, if I'm not booked. Wednesday, the 14th of October. Subject to be announced, but I'm giving lots of talks at the moment on the topic of life, leadership, and legacy. Fun enough time with Black History Month. Life, leadership, and legacy, which is going to be, and so that's a big topic.
Yes, it is.
Maybe the word legacy. Have we done legacy?
No.
Legacy might be an interesting topic. What do you think? Legacy. Because that plays out both ways, isn't it? What have you been given as well as what you want to leave? Legacy. So yeah, thank you all, everyone. It's been really wonderful hearing you all today. I just want to know more about all those stories. I want to just hear more about the 19-year-old Iris. I want to hear more about that scenario and that summer and all the lessons you learned that summer, Robin, after, you know, not being able to move all summer. I'm fascinated by all of these rich life lessons, that seminar and everything else. But really, really good to see you, everybody, and see you maybe next Wednesday if you're all free. And let's say a goodbye to everyone at home. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.